Welcome. Welcome to the podcast. I had a couple of regrets from last week that I'll cover off. Not negative regrets, just things that I didn't get around to and should have. Um, I'm going to start podcasts with the quote of the day. I've decided, and today's quote of the day is from Robin Williams. Um, Robin said, "I used to think the worst thing in life is to end up all alone. It's not. The worst thing in life is to end up with people that make you feel all alone." Wowzers. Wowzers is not part of the quote. Yeah, I think we've all been there, haven't we? Around people that make you feel all alone. You're like, Jesus Christ, what's going on here? All right, let's not get. Perhaps that's not. Is that the best quote I could have started with? Anyway, it's quote of the day. I like the idea. Quote of the day, Robin Williams. You know, being all alone isn't the worst thing. I actually don't. The older I get, the more I've enjoyed being alone. And I think that comes from sort of, and I wonder if retirees feel this, that when they eventually sort of get out of the workplace and just get back into sort of not having regular contact with people, whether they kind of breathe a sigh of relief and go, oh my God, that's what's been stressing me out. People. Because people can really bring you down. Don't get me wrong, guys. Let's balance it out. People can bring you up as well. Yeah. I don't want to start like Desi Downer. People can so bring you up, but Jesus Christ, people can bring you down, can't they? Like down. Prices are down. All right. So I did have some regrets from last week because I didn't get round to them, and one of them was the rather intriguing case of a sex doll that was packed inside a suitcase, which was mistaken for a human being and triggered a 20-hour homicide investigation. It was south of Goulburn. I can't remember the town. It was about 60 k's south of Goulburn, heading towards the Southern Highlands. And officers treated the site as a crime scene, as they should. And they began checking missing persons reports and all of the kind of things you'd expect in a police investigation. It was apparently a very high-end sex doll, very realistic, female. It was clothed. It had artificial hair, which is a nice touch, and a nose piercing, which I really enjoyed in terms of a realistic sex doll. The nose piercing. That's next leveling it, isn't it? I wonder if that person did the nose piercing themselves, the person who owned the sex doll. I wonder if that was something they did themselves. Or, you know what Sharon needs? A nose piercing, just so I can sort of imagine that she's a bit naughty and a bit, because girls with nose piercings traditionally are not, they can be quite naughty. It also had simulated markings, bruises and grazes. So you've got the nose piercing, you've got artificial hair, and you've got bruising and grazing, which of course heightened concerns for the homicide investigators. Police leadership have defended the 20 hours that it took for them to work out that it was actually a sex doll inside the suitcase, saying that officers acted correctly, and experts noted that some modern dolls are remarkably convincing in confined spaces like suitcases, and that similar sort of issues have occurred in other regional parts of Australia. How many sex dolls are being dumped in suitcases around the country? And the follow-up question is why? What's going on? What's happening within the sex doll human relationship where you go, you know what, Sharon, your nose piercing, your artificial hair, the bruises, the grazing, I'm not buying any of it. And you whack the sex doll in a suitcase and dump it beside the highway. I mean, that is That is crazy, isn't it? That makes me concerned that there's a man out there that, and I'm assuming it's a man, forgive me if I'm wrong, that there's a man out there that hates its sex doll so much he's had to shove it in a suitcase and dump it by the side of the road. Strange. God, men can be strange, can't they? This isn't a man bashing segment, but Jesus Christ, men can be strange. They really can be. Secondary to all of that, to the whys, the wherefores, the repeated, the alarming incidents of other sex dolls found in rural towns around Australia by the side of the highway, the fact that in confined spaces a sex doll can appear quite real. Secondary to that, and I love the police sort of leadership that says that, they're not concerned by the 20 hours that it took to discover that it was in fact a sex doll and not a missing person or indeed a human being. Because to that I say no. I'd be concerned if I was in police leadership, because my feeling would be, and I don't want to ruin the crime scene, but why don't we unzip the bag and just see if that's a sex doll gag? Why does it take 20 hours to work out that regardless of the grazing and the bruising, the artificial hair and the nose piercing, that what we're dealing with here is a sex doll in a suitcase? I don't want to undermine the police force. My God, that's the last thing I want to do. But Jesus Christ, I would have thought that within 20 hours, anyone involved in this has gone, you know what? I think that's a sex doll. This is looking less and less like a missing person and more like a fun weekend gone slightly awry. Another regret I had from last week is not mentioning Rhiannon Ifland. And Ifland, quite an ironic name, because Rhiannon, and I must say, Rhiannon, if you're listening, I don't love the name Rhiannon, and it's not that I don't love it, it's just that it's a hard name to say. Rhiannon. It's got a lot of Rhiannon. It's got a lot of Rhiannon in it. I'm just going to call you Rhi from now on. Rhi Ifland has become the greatest cliff diver in history. She's an Aussie. And I think this one slid under the radar. I did not see this covered in mainstream media, and forgive me if I'm wrong. She won her 10th consecutive title in Mostar. Now, I could have done a little bit more research here, and I'm the first to admit that I'm not entirely sure. Is Mostar... am I remembering that it was in Bolivia, or have I just entirely made that up? Anyway, Rhi Ifland, off the 21-metre platform, won her 10th cliff diving competition in a row to make it her 48th overall competition win, which moves her past Englishman Gary Hunt, who by all reports is one of the great hunts, particularly in the cliff diving world. Don't start me about Gary. What a hunt. Gary, just from a family of hunts. Yeah, she went past Gary Hunt to become the greatest ever cliff diver in history. 34 years old, Novocastrian. And she said there's no secret to being consistent. Practice, practice, practice. And it's paid off for me. And it has paid off for you, Rhiannon, Ifland. If land's not what you're after, try the 21-metre platform. Apologies, Rhi, that I didn't cover you off last week. Finally, in regrets from last week's podcast, my new segment, which I'm happy to attach a sponsor to at any point. Regrets. I had a few, but then again, too few to mention. Reginald Chard. Here's a lovely story. It's a sad story, but it's also It's one of the last of these kinds of stories that we'll be able to keep talking about. Reginald Chard was our last surviving Kokoda veteran. And Reginald passed away at the wonderful age of 102. He fought in New Guinea. He survived repeated bouts of malaria and the Battle of Sanananda. As I was looking at this story, 625 Australians were killed in New Guinea, 1,600 wounded along the track, the Kokoda track. He lost 30 kilos, Reginald. And when he came back to Australia, he drove trucks and dedicated his life to the Kokoda legacy. Good on you, Reginald. Honestly, extraordinary men. Different men, weren't they? And women, don't get me wrong. Those armed services people that have actually seen combat, particularly that kind of combat in the jungles of New Guinea. For anyone that's been to that part of the world and done that Kokoda track, you'd have a better feeling of what they've gone through than I have. And the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels, I don't know what the rule is on the Fuzzy Wuzzies, whether we're allowed to discuss them or whether the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels have got a new name. And apologies if I'm crossing a line here with the Fuzzies or the Wuzzies. I'm not sure if you can shorten it to Fuzzy or Wuzzy or Angels. Maybe we'll just say the Angels. Extraordinary, helping the Australian troops as they made their way up and over the pass to push the Japanese back into the Pacific. Wow. Well done, Reginald. And to Reginald's loved ones, condolences. All right, as we move on, some housekeeping, new segment, housekeeping, which of course could be sponsored by any kind of cleaning product, Sard, Wonder Soap, excuse me, as I have a little sip of my cup of joe. People have been asking where they can see the podcast. Glasses update while I'm discussing this. They're on their way. You can see where the dogs had a go at these ones. But as I was at OPM yesterday, one of the lovely ladies there, my regular OPSM, said, how do I see the podcast? Where is the vision? And I don't have an answer for that. I'm assuming it's YouTube. So hopefully we'll get a link or some such put into somewhere that lets people go to the vision. Housekeeping wise, I'm just going to take us through some of the messages that I received through the week, starting with Ben Henderson as I scroll through. And here's Ben's message. Hi, mate. This is Regards Podcast. Hi, mate. Hope you're well. Great podcast. It's nice to hear thoughts on all topics that everyday Aussies are talking about within their friendship circles and families. Are we? Nice to get some guests onto the show, says Ben. Maybe comedian friends who aren't necessarily mainstream. We're all looking to support up-and-coming people. Anyway, mate, good to hear your voice again. Cheers. Thank you, Ben. I used to get lots of... Fifi, Box and I, when we first started radio, used to get lots of unknown comedians on the show. But I guess as you sort of mature in that commercial world, you become less averse to sort of helping out non-profiled people. It's an awful thing to say, but I guess it was true for me. Am I going to interview sort of comedians coming up through the ranks? No, I'm not. But Ben, lovely idea. I get it, and I'd like to be a part of it. And mate, if you're a comedian coming up through the ranks and you want to drop me a message, feel free. I'm happy to talk about what you're doing, what you're up to. Grant Diva sent me a message. Let's see if we can find Grant. Mate, love the podcast, especially the Master Bates gear. For those of you that heard last week, you'll know what he means. Constructive criticism, ? From Ben. I was hoping you'd really go into the Carl Stefanovic situation, tell us what you really thought, and maybe edit out the coffee sips. But all in all, a good job. Thank you, mate. Thank you, Grant. The Carl Stefanovic situation. Well, what is that? Carl loses a mainstream media job hosting the Today Show after 20 years for Channel 9, after starting his own podcast, which episode 1 features Pauline Hanson. I think he had Albo. I think he's had Kyle Sandilands. I don't know who else he's had. But the one where he came unstuck was a far-right guy called Tommy Robinson. I don't need to rehash all of that. I don't need to talk about whether that's freedom of speech for Carl, or whether, if you're presenting yourself as a journalist, interviews need to involve pushback rather than handshakes and hugs and telling blokes you love them. I don't know. I don't know Carl well enough to know if he'd regret what's happened or whether he's just pushing on and building this podcast, which seems to be going well for him. I don't know. I just know that people have an expectation of media personalities. They want them to sit in the box that they've always sat in. Maybe this was part of Carl. Maybe this was part of Carl's personality, that he was feeling a bit populist right, as they say, and wanted to be able to talk about that more openly than he was given the opportunity to do so on Channel 9. I don't know. But I know it's he's got a big wobble on. He's got a big wobble on. Maybe he doesn't think he's got a big wobble on, but I reckon his bank manager would think he's got a wobble on. So I don't know what else to say about that, Grant, other than, sharing experiences that I've had personally with Carl, but I don't think anyone wins if we go back through all that sort of stuff. Oh, and also Grant suggested that we have an Ask Marty segment where listeners can email questions in. Listen, don't email, but definitely go to my Instagram. Firstly, follow me, please, for Christ's sake. I've realised that that's a big thing. I never thought it was, but please follow me on Instagram. If you only do one thing after this podcast today, follow me. And in the comments section under the bits of podcasts that are relevant, I'll go through and have a look at them all, which I have done, and thank you for all your messages. Feel free to ask me a question for what could be a new segment called Ask Marty. Obviously, welcoming sponsors to that. Moving on, Richard Gilligan got in touch with me. Richard is an old-time listener of the radio, I believe. He said, "Got some ideas, Shigs. Bit of cricket chat," says Richard. "Your disdain for Davey," and he means Dave Warner, "is refreshing. And with the Ashes coming and our pretty average performances of late, there's got to be something there. Here's a segment. When did everything turn to shit?" is Richard's suggestion. When did everything turn to shit? He says, "I say salted caramel. Everything was fine when caramel was caramel," says Richard. Okay, he's working off the theory that when salted caramel was introduced, everything went to shit. He says, "I've got a story or two I'll send you. Really great to have you back, mate." Weird calling you mate, but you get it. Okay, I understand, Richard. He then adds up, and I could not agree with this, and in fact replied to Richard. "Way too many earrings in our cricket team to strike fear into anyone. Here. The cricket field, more particularly the pitch itself, is no place for an earring. And that's nothing other than costume jewellery, Johnny Depp style. There's no place in the world of cricket for earrings. Christ, chains, absolutely. Some of the great chain-wearing men over the years have struck the fear of God into people. I'm thinking of Lenny Pascoe, obviously, Dennis Lilly, any of the West Indians. My God, it was like watching a Public Enemy video when some of those blokes were rolling in, pushing off the fence. It had a real Flavor Flav feel. It wouldn't have surprised me at all to see the big bird with a full-size clock around his neck. But earrings, maybe it's my generation of blokes, but I tell you what, there is absolutely no place for an earring on the cricket pitch. I couldn't agree more, Richard. Um, who else have we got here? Sausage Legs is back sending me a message, and for old fans of the show, you'll remember Sausage Legs has been, mate, messaging me since, I've got to be 10, 15 years. Just a simple one. Just listen to your podcast, mate. It was so good to hear you back doing your thing. Good on you, mate. Lovely to hear from you. Now, here's one that I absolutely love for old fans of the last show that I was working on Triple M. Scottish Graham has got in contact with me. Is this not the greatest news you could ever hope for? And I just loved hearing from Graham because old fans will remember that this relationship with Graham started when a very ruddy faced man in a bathtub sent us that exact photo. And turns out it was Scottish Graham, an international listener, Scotland. And Graham, from memory, was working in the post office and retired, and is still listening to my work after all these years. He said, "Welcome back, Marty. Scottish Graham here. I loved the first podcast. Anyway, I was thinking about the Doctor Who actor. I think it's Peter Davison. Hopefully lots of great content to come." Scottish Graham's referring to me just quickly chatting about Doctor Who last week, and it was Peter Davison, you're right, the blonde-haired doctor. I couldn't remember because I reckon they were my two doctors, Tom Baker and Peter Davison. But listen, lovely to hear from you, Scottish Graham. Geez, it was lovely to hear from you, mate. I'm glad you're out there fighting fit and enjoying life. I hope you're enjoying life. Please always update me, mate, on how you're going. And then finally, Blake, who's been a long-time fan of the show, said to me, "Marty, it's 10:52 here in Amsterdam. Just staying at a hotel near the airport, listening to you after a very, very, very gay holiday around Europe. Safe to say I did more than my fair share of film a cavity on this trip." I said, "Great to hear from you, mate. Hope the trip went well. Stay gay." So lovely to hear from Blake as always. So keep contacting me. I'm seeing all the messages, and thank you to all the people that sent me lovely messages saying you enjoyed the podcast. I'm enjoying it more than I thought. I think I'm enjoying talking uninterrupted. You know what I mean? Not having just random interjections where you're like, "Oh, thanks for taking me completely off track," and offering nothing at the same time. What an extraordinary skill. All right, so moving on. I've just last weekend done Belrose on the northern beaches of Sydney and Nowra on Saturday night as the last weekend of the Red Card Tour, which continues. Get a ticket. I'm coming to Avoca Beach this weekend. If you're listening to this, it would be the weekend of the 21st and 22nd of August, 2026. So I'm in Avoca, and then I'm in Warners Bay, just near Newcastle this weekend coming. Do yourself a favour, come and see the show. I'm loving it. It's going well. And please check my Instagram for dates near you. I'm in Bowral soon as well, so I'd love to see people from Bowral getting involved. But in Nowra, I was born in Nowra, and I'm a product of the Shoalhaven. I grew up predominantly in Canberra, but I was born in Nowra. And as I was, I always Wikipedia the town I'm in case there's anything interesting. Here's the interesting thing for me. I'm on the Wikipedia page of Nowra as a notable person that came out of Nowra. Isn't that wonderful? I mean, there's some other notable people that came out of Nowra. Michael O'Connor, Dual International, came out of Nowra. There's a few others. Let me just quickly find it here as I scroll down. And Arthur Boyd is from Nowra. Now, sometimes I like to say Nowra. Who else? I mean, there's a few here. I've got to be honest. Nick Maddinson, cricketer. Michael O'Connor. Ashley Paskey, who was in Neighbours. I remember the name. Rodney Rood, that's right. Rodney Rood is from Nowra. And in fact, when I was there, I was talking to the audience, and Rodney Rood was the first stand-up comedian, one of the first. The first was really Eddie Murphy's Delirious, but the first Australian stand-up comedian I ever heard was pushing a cassette into a family friend's cassette player in their car and tooling around, listening to Rodney Rood. And then it's me after Rodney. It's unfortunate. They could have had a little bit of separation between Rodney and me. I've spent my life in the shadow of other comedians, and now, of course, as a notable person from Nowra, I have to sit directly under Rodney Rood. Thanks, guys. Who else is there? Andrew Walker, rugby league, rugby union, dual international, very good footballer. Look, there's other people there. Yeah, other people there. But isn't that fun? I don't know why I kept saying noticeable. I'm a notable person from Nowra. I'm not surprised. I guess, someone has to be notable from Nowra, and turns out it's me. Just having a sip of my coffee, which I know that Grad Diva hates. The other thing about Nowra, which I forgot to talk to the audience about, was not only was I born in the Shoalhaven Hospital there, my next visit to that hospital was as a 17-year-old when I was on a holiday in Ulladulla on the south coast. I got really unwell. I couldn't stop vomiting. I was staying with family friends. It was embarrassing. My parents weren't there. They found me passed out, wedged between the washing machine in the bathroom and the bathroom wall. I mean, God, what a lot of carry on. That is my specialty, though. When I'm sick, I can carry on. So anyway, the carry on ends up being transported via ambulance to the Milton Hospital, where they're sort of like, we actually don't know what's wrong with you. So then transported again via ambulance to the Nowra Hospital. Actually, no, that's wrong. At the Milton Hospital, they tried to give me a lumbar puncture. That's right. Because they suspected I might have had viral meningitis. Anyway, the first bloke has a crack at it, and he can't get it done. So I'm curled up on my side in the fetal position while what I would describe as a rank amateur at Milton Hospital, an absolute amateur doctor. I mean, if you're at the hospital in Milton, I don't reckon, and please don't be offended by this, I don't know if you're A grade. And I hope that isn't offensive to any of the staff at Milton Hospital or any frontline workers. Anyway, I get transported to Nowra via ambulance. By this stage, the parents are on the way, no doubt rolling their eyes at each other, thinking, why is this kid such a dead shit? I get to the Shoalhaven Hospital, where they then attempt a follow-up lumbar puncture, which is successful. Long story short, I don't have viral meningitis. I've just been carrying on like an absolute peanut. But I do remember the nurse there, and this is how important first responders and the frontline workers are. And please share your experience with me via the messages in Instagram if you've experienced this. Heather Mackay was that nurse's name, and I've never forgotten that. As a very unwell 17-year-old, how lovely Heather was to me. And that's the effect that these frontline people can have on you, isn't it? Drop me a message if anyone's ever had that kind of effect on you, where you've just never forgotten their name for whatever reason. So Heather Mackay, if there is in any way you could be listening to this, you treated a 17-year-old boy at the Shoalhaven Hospital who was carrying on like his life was ending, just living in the drama of the moment and making an absolute twat of himself. Can I please thank you and let you know that you've stayed with me all that time? So that was Belrose and Nowra over the weekend. heading into Avoca and Warners Bay this weekend, and then shortly after that, Bowral. So I'd love to see the people of Bowral coming along. If you know anyone in Bowral, drop them a line, let them know I'm heading there. All right, let's get into the sort of bulk of today. Here's a story from The Vault, which is a segment I'm desperately trying to give legs to and build some momentum around. I'm not sure how it's going, but, I'm committed to it. From The Vault, if I had a sound effect guy, I could have a screeching sort of vault door opening. I think we've discussed that. Actor who starred in unsimulated oral sex scene reveals bizarre way he prepared. I said unsimulated. An actor, and now this is out of The Vault, who was part of a graphic unsimulated sex scene, has opened up on the strange way he prepared. Before we get into that, let's just cover off the story. Most of the time, obviously, actors aren't actually doing anything. This is like heavily choreographed performance that I've seen described in this article as almost like a dance routine. Some of these sex scenes, the modesty garments, pads, pouches. The world's full of intimacy coordinators now as well. Gone are the days where you could sort of fumble your way through a sex scene, brushing body parts and potentially making everyone uncomfortable by getting what we used to call in the old days a half bar. I don't know if you can still reference the old half bar. Certainly it can be a curse, the half bar, if it arrives at the wrong time. And I would imagine there's been many a time between actors on set where the gentleman in the group has had to sort of put his hand up and say, listen, I'm going to need a minute. Maybe a light powder. How's my hair kind of check. Whilst the half bar just disappears back into the undies. Sometimes sex scenes look a bit too real, and that's because they actually can be. And this is where we're heading. Unsimulated sex scenes appearing in non-pornographic movies have proved controversial since cinema began. Yeah, they have, because it's a movie. It's not a porno. Actors feel like it'd be more believable sometimes for them to actually rip into it. Actors are a funny mob, aren't they? They always need a motivation. They always need to understand, where their character's coming from in relation to not only the scene they're in, but the space they're surrounded by. So much so that it's, it gets to a point we're having a conversation with Jenny. Jenny, I think I'm trying to work out how to phrase this, Jenny, but I think I'm going to have to dick you. It just feels like a dicking's what's required in this scene. Does everyone agree with that? Does it feel to everyone, and I'm asking all you guys, lighting, sound, I don't mind anyone who wants to have an opinion here, but does anyone else feel like I'm going to really need to grind? Anyway, this bloke called Vincent Gallo. Now, this is a famous unsimulated sex scene, together with the actor Chloe Sevigny, who I feel like I know Chloe. I don't feel like I know Vincent Gallo. The movie was called The Brown Bunny. The Brown Bunny, indeed. The official title's Two in the Brown Bunny, I believe. I'm just going to have a sip of my coffee. Yeah, I believe it was called Two in the Brown Bunny. They famously took part in an unsimulated sex scene in 2003. I said it was out of The Vault. Gallo, who also directed the exotic thriller. Well, this is starting to make a little bit more sense. Not only was he starring in it, he was directing it. I mean, it's easy when you're the director to say to Chloe Sevigny, Chloe, I've had to think about this overnight, and I can't see any other way around this. I think we've got to do an unsimulated oral sex scene. I know, but I will refer to the contract if I have to. So he's playing professional motorcycle racer Bud Clay. He heads to New Hampshire Rather, he heads from New Hampshire to California to race again. Oh, I love it. Along the way, he meets different women who provide him with the cure to his own loneliness. I think we've all been there, met different women along the way, not necessarily to relaunch our professional motorcycle racing career, but just we've all met women along the way in life who have been able to provide a cure to our loneliness. But one specific woman from his past named Daisy, Chloe Savigno, can actually satisfy him. Oh my God. So in one scene, Savigny performed unsimulated oral sex on Gallo, which she later described as being very complicated. Very complicated, says Chloe. I'm not sure which part of it's complicated. I mean, my experience of it's always been pretty straightforward. I don't need to go into details, but I think we all understand how oral sex works. So I'm not sure which part of it was complicated. Maybe the way she felt about performing an unsimulated sex scene in a movie, not a porno. Anyway, here's Gallo's preparation, which is what the article was essentially about. He's revealed the odd way he prepared. And he revealed this during a news conference at the 2003 Cannes Film Festival for Two in the Brown Bunny's release. He said, "What I did was drink a lot of pineapple juice." So there's the big reveal from Gallo regards preparation for an unsimulated oral sex scene. Pile into the pineapple juice. He clarified, "Pineapple juice makes everything taste better, and I tried to stay as clean as I could." Well, thank you, Vincent, for keeping the area clean and attempting to taste good with the addition of pineapple juice. My Christ, actors are strange people. He went on to admit that the scene in question was the most complex and most what he's described as evolved thing that he's ever done. I don't know about that. I've done some evolved things that don't involve sitting on a television/movie set being sucked off, for want of a better word. I mean, I'm reluctant to use that phrasing. Meanwhile, speaking of her role in the whole thing, Savigny said, "I think it was a way of kind of reclaiming myself," says Chloe, which sounds odd. Yeah, it does, Chloe, I'm not going to lie. But after the celebrity and stuff being like, "No, that's not who I am. I'm this other thing and this is what I stand for," or wanting to push the envelope. Now, I'm just reading that. It makes no sense to me. I think what she's saying is, she'd been through this whole celebrity thing and she's like, "No, that's not who I am. I'm this other thing." And she's wanted to push the envelope. And by pushing the envelope, obviously she means pushing her mouth around Vincent's cock. Now, I don't want to go too much further than that. I feel like I'm tiptoeing a very precarious line. She did admit that she'll probably have to go and have therapy at some point, but I love Vincent. The film is tragic and beautiful, and I'm proud of it and my performance. Well, good on you, Chloe. You've certainly reclaimed yourself there, which is what you wanted. So you've ticked that box. I'm sad that people think one way of the movie, but what can you do? I've done many explicit sex scenes, continues Chloe, but I'm not that interested in doing anymore. I'm more self-aware now and wouldn't be able to be as free. So why even do it? Well, why even do it indeed, Chloe? Why even do it indeed? It's never come up on the set of Fisk, I'll be honest about that. All right, moving on. So there's a couple of stories locally that have caught my eye. Home and Away actor Josh Quantart, I saw through the week, has pled guilty to a high-range drink driving charge, 0.36, following a single vehicle crash, 50 years old, All Saints underbelly. He's driving a white Toyota Corolla, which may well be the biggest crime of this whole story. He's crashed into a ditch, reportedly, allegedly drinking over several days, blew 0.36, which is actually considered life-threatening. He played Miles, who was the long-lost brother of Kate Ritchie's character. God, what is it about alcohol and home and away people? Jesus, 0.36 is a big reading, isn't it? Well, I hope Josh is, fortunately no one was hurt. I think it's the only thing we can take from that. In other news, Jonas Brothers, they're going to be headlining the halftime show between the 49ers, the San Francisco 49ers, and the LA Rams at the MCG on September 11. Now, when I saw that date, I thought, well, that can't be right. That's in the middle of the finals series for the AFL. No, it is right. That is if you lose the qualifying final, you'll be hosting a game. Two losing teams of the qualifying finals will host games. Now, that could clash with the AFL. Well, the MCG could be free, but that's the NFL's first ever regular season game in Australia. It's going to be played on Netflix. Netflix. Okay, it's going to be on Netflix. Jesus Christ, could you imagine if it clashes with the AFL semis? Who's booked that? What idiot books a game of anything at the MCG in September? You'd have to be kidding me, wouldn't you? That is just ridiculous. I mean, the MCG is supposed to look absolutely pristine at 2 times of the year. AFL semi-final, final, Boxing Day cricket test. I mean, other than that, you can have it. I don't care how it looks. But for the AFL grand final and for the Boxing Day test, that ground must look absolutely pristine. If I see one 10-yard marking on that ground in the semi-finals, I will absolutely spew. They've sold 20,000 albums, the Jonas Brothers. I couldn't name us 20,000, 20 million. 20 million albums they've sold, Nick, Joe and Kevin. I couldn't name a single song. God, the Jonas Brothers. I'd rather see the Johns Brothers, Andrew and Maddie, at halftime, interviewing each other about growing up in Cessnock. All right, as we barrel towards the end of today's podcast, let me just walk you through Ray Gunn's latest offering. Ray Gunn, of course, we know Ray Gunn from the breakdancing disaster. There's a Netflix doco coming out called Ray Gunn Breaking Badly, and Breaking Badly is exactly what that woman did. She's addressing the explosive claims that she cheated her way into the Olympics with help from her husband. I didn't know any of this stuff. She got no judges' votes across her 3 battles. I mean, God, breakdancing. Across her 3 battles, she got no judges' votes. Then there was an allegation that there was a corrupt selection process for her to even be part of the Olympics. Now, I don't remember any of this coming out at the time. Her husband, now this may be news to a lot of you, it was news to me, was the coach of the Australian breakdancing team. Well, firstly, what does the coach of the Australian breakdancing team do? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mate, we're spinning without helmets today. I said that in the email. Did you not read that through the week? I said, don't bother bringing your helmets. We're going to try the spin without the helmets. Let's go from the top. 2, 3, 4. I mean, what in Christ is the coach of the Australian break? And if you're a break dancer, don't bother actually messaging me and telling me that there's lots of, dance, choreography, da-di-da-di-da. Of course there is. But it is ludicrous for those of us outside the breakdancing community to think that there's a coach. His name's Samuel Free. Big shout out. The allegations are false. Let me be very clear about that. He did not judge any of the Oceania champs, which is how you win your way through qualification to be part of the team. Ray Gunn won her spot by defeating Molly, in brackets, Holy Molly, inverted commas rather, Chapman. Molly Chapman, who's known as Holy Molly. Jesus Christ, I tell you what, if you've been beaten by ray gun in the world of breakdancing, and please don't take this the wrong way, Molly, I'd give it away. I'd give it away today. Do you know what? I'd wake up, even if you have to wait till tomorrow to give it away, Molly. Wake up tomorrow, think to yourself, remind yourself that ray gun rolled you at the Olympics. Well, you didn't even get to the Olympics, apologies. Ray gun rolled you in the Oceania champs. And listen, Molly, do what you like. If you want to keep breaking, keep breaking. I'm just saying, have a think. Ray gun also represented Australia in the World Breakdancing Championships in 21, 22 and 23. She did, however, predict the fallout from the Olympics with her therapist, because her therapist, this is prior to the Games, her therapist said to her, what's the worst that could happen? And Ray gun said, the whole world could laugh at me. And I think somewhere deep down, Ray gun knew that that could happen, and as it turned out, did happen. I mean, maybe, I think, look, she could be a great break dancer. I'll never know. But the choreography involved in the kangaroo move, I don't want to drag us back through it all, but Jesus Christ, it was awful. But hats off to Ray gun. Let me balance this out by saying you made it to the Olympics, which is something I've never done. So Ray gun's parents were asked as part of this documentary if they thought she'd ever be an Olympian. Her mother simply replied, never. Thanks, Mum. And her father, which I must say is outrageous, burst out laughing and then followed the laughter with, that's not the right reaction, is it? No, Dad, it's not. Mother says never. Father laughs and then says that's not the right reaction, is it? I'm feeling like Ray gun's come out of a pretty supportive family unit. It's what you want. It's such an Australian reaction too, though, isn't it? In the lounge room. I'm imagining it's a 70s style lounge room. 70s Australia, maybe 80s Australia. And what did you think? Did you think she'd ever become an Olympian? Never. Dad? That's not the appropriate reaction, is it? Jesus Christ. I think it's actually the most appropriate reaction. Do you know Ray gun's thesis? Because she's got a PhD. Her thesis, now this is where universities have gone absolutely mad. Her thesis was gender within Sydney's breakdancing community. Gender within Sydney's breakdancing community. How are you getting 10,000 words out of that? I mean, it's just 2 columns, isn't it? 46 men, 22 women. The end. If you're interested, Ray gun's now doing cameo stuff, so if you want a shout out for your 60th, head there and drop her a line. Now, I've got something I could finish with, or I could finish now. Look, I tell you what, I'll just finish with it quickly, just because we're still here. And, it just seems like something we should do. I do have to find it, though. And one of the things that I'm not great at, which I think we can all agree on, is finding content in real time. Traditionally I've had stuff put in front of me. I mean, it's always been my content, don't get me wrong, but it's also been just slid in front of me at the appropriate time when you do this stuff on your own. Here we go. Found it. Man arrested for cutting off his own penis and using it to start a fire in his neighbour's garage is the heading. And why wouldn't you just quickly cover it off before the end of today's pod? What's his name? A 36-year-old Indiana man, they haven't given us his name, has been charged with arson. Seems like the wrong side. Arson after allegedly cutting off his own penis, dousing it in petrol, setting it on fire, and igniting a blaze that damaged a detached garage and nearby property. It happened in Fort Wayne. Suspects now facing felony arson charges. The case has drawn widespread attention because of its highly unusual circumstances. I mean, I'm not laughing. But it's a pretty radical play, isn't it? I mean, you're not in your right mind. Let's just be clear about that. I'm heading down the shed, fellas. Well, what do you got on? You're doing some woodworking. No, not well, sort of. I'm going to cut my cock off and set it on fire and see if I can burn down Gary's shed. See yous. All right, gang. Drop me a message through the Instagram. Follow me on the Instagram, please. This is also something you can watch. Being filmed is what I mean. So find that. And come and see the show, the Red Card Tour. I'm heading towards Bowral shortly, and I'd love to see people there. All right, gang. Talk soon. Bye-bye now.